You fool! Warren is dead. Possession and Others. 3 Weird Tales by Julius Long. Possession. When I beheld Anderson's face as he emerged from Dr. Silvara's inner office, I expected the worst. His manner was easy and calm. Years of intimacy had taught me that my nervous and excitable friend was serene and tranquil only when face to face with some inevitable misfortune. I had never before seen him so cool. Never before had he been confronted with a catastrophe so dire and unavoidable. I knew that he was doomed to die. In his bosom he carried the fatal seed of extinction. It would soon expand within him until it had suffocated the last small remnant of vitality. "Let us take a bus," he said. We climbed to the top of a Fifth Avenue bus and occupied a front seat. Slowly we progressed down 57th Street to the drive. I could not bring myself to question Anderson concerning the interview. I anticipated the answer and did not wish to make him repeat his own death sentence. Yet I feared he might interpret my silence as indifference. He must have sensed my dilemma, for he turned and spoke to me. His tone was utterly casual. "You may not know it, but you are riding with what is virtually a corpse. I have but 2 weeks to live." Dr. Silvara was very precise about it. 2 weeks exactly. I must be careful not to live 13 days or 15. That would seriously undermine the doctor's reputation for infallibility. I was appalled by this ghastly raillery. One expects a certain measure of dignity in a man on the threshold of death. But the speech was characteristic of Anderson. He could take nothing seriously, not even his own demise. "You must resign at once," I told him. "You must use these 2 precious weeks to complete your book." Anderson was professor of psychology, and he had intimated to me that his latest work was based upon a discovery that would revolutionize the science of psychology. He laughed cynically. "Nothing matters to me except my own life," he said. "If I'm not to live to enjoy my fame, why strive for it?" I was surprised by this selfish attitude, but said nothing about it. "I shall have to find someone else to put me to sleep at night," I observed, more to break the silence than anything else. I had suffered from insomnia for years, and not until Anderson had come to my aid with hypnotic treatment had I enjoyed relief. Every night thereafter he would come to my apartment, which was in the same building as his own, and repeat his treatment. I became so responsive to his efforts that he could send me off to sleep merely by uttering a few soothing words. I was conscious that my suggestibility had reached a stage where my friend might abuse his trust. I knew very well that prolonged hypnotic treatment subordinates the mind of the subject to that of the operator. But Anderson had never caused me to doubt his good will. "Do not worry about the future until it is the present," he said lightly. That night, he came as usual to my rooms and began his operations with great impatience. I accepted this as natural, assuming that he wished to be through to rush back to his book. In the few seconds before I went to sleep, I was struck by the unusual appearance of his face. The light had been extinguished, and only the soft moonlight illuminated the room. His features were shadowed. Even his blonde hair appeared black and sharply outlined. His eyes seemed to appear from the impenetrable recesses of bottomless wells. His thin lips spoke with scarcely perceptible movements. I had never seen a countenance so diabolical, and in the fraction of a second before I lost consciousness, I regretted that I had let myself become so dependent upon the man. Throughout the night, I dreamed strange nightmares, which, upon awakening, I could not call to mind. I knew only that they had been horrible and gruesome. During the day, I was tired and weary, as if I had not slept the previous night. Throughout my English classes, I stammered and stuttered. My students did not conceal their suspicion that I had dissipated, and they exchanged amused glances. The next day and the days after that, my condition grew worse. Then there occurred an incident which tried my credulity. It happened during my 11 o'clock class. I was lecturing on the idiosyncrasies of Laurence Sterne when I noticed a stirring and uneasiness in my listeners. I paused an instant and continued. The students again became attentive. At the end of the hour, I summoned one of them to my desk. There seemed to be some irregularity during my lecture, I said. Did I commit some frightful blunder? The student stammered hesitatingly. Out with it, I commanded impatiently. We were wondering, he confided, why you broke off your lecture to give us a discourse on the symptoms of agoraphobia. It was all very interesting, but it seemed a bit unusual to hear such information in a lecture on Sterne. I can believe that, I said. That will do. Thank you very much. During lunch, I racked my brain to account for this strange lapse. The circumstance that puzzled me most of all was that I knew absolutely nothing of agoraphobia. I doubt that I had ever heard of it before. I decided to consult Anderson. He taught the neuroses. He would know all about the disease. Besides, he might be able to explain my unusual experience. That night I told him of it, but he was very vague. You mustn't take your experiences too seriously, he said. That night's sleep was suffused with mad dreams, whose hideous content was too elusive for me to recapture upon awakening. That day was more tedious and annoying than those previous. The strange incident of the day before was complicated by an astounding discovery. A student came to me after class and reported that a similar phenomenon had occurred during Professor Anderson's 11 o'clock lecture on the neuroses. Without warning, he discontinued his lecture on agoraphobia and spoke eloquently of the style of Laurence Sterne. I was assured that he supplied the very information that I omitted from my own lecture. I spent the rest of the day trying to account for this strange phenomenon. Had Anderson's personality been exchanged with my own? What could cause such an unnatural occurrence? I could not believe that there existed between Anderson and me a mutual sympathy of such intensity that it would give rise to a supernatural phenomenon. Indeed, I had begun to feel that he hated me for my healthy body and the years I was to outlive him. His manner had become subtly strained, though outwardly he manifested the same friendship. I confronted him with the fact of his own simultaneous lapse, and he simulated surprise, which did not deceive me. Why did he try to pass the whole affair off as a commonplace occurrence? I suspected that even then he was attempting to allay my suspicion. That night, I was frightened by a nightmare which I could later recall. Indeed, I remembered it so vividly that I refused to think it a dream. Here are the details. I was awakened in the middle of the night by an almost unendurable pain in my lungs. Gasping for breath, I climbed out of bed. My limbs weighed heavily, and my muscles were unresponsive. I was conscious that I was a very sick man. With difficulty, I made my way to the window. Not until I stared down into the street below did I discover that I was not in my own apartment. My rooms open only on 112th Street. I found myself looking down into Broadway. I reflected a moment. Had I spent the night with someone? I instantly recalled that I had not. I looked about myself. The clothes that hung carelessly over chairs were not my own, yet they were strangely familiar. In the moonlight, I caught a glimpse of my hands. I started in horror. They were bony and almost devoid of flesh. I rushed through a door which I thought would lead to the hallway. I found myself in a bathroom. I searched for a switch and snapped on the light. I saw at once that I was in Anderson's apartment. I turned and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The face I beheld was the sickly and sallow visage of Anderson. Oblivion folded over me. Such was my dream. Or was it a dream? I was racked by the terrible suspicion that the experience was not imaginary, but real. There was about my memory of it a persistent vividness that was very unlike the fading recollection of a dream. Was my soul temporarily transferred into the dying body of my friend? Had the unaccountable experience in the classroom been repeated? The thought nearly drove me mad. I recalled Anderson's strange manner, his seeming indifference to death. Could it have been that he expected to live on in my body after his own had succumbed to the ravages of his disease? Was he transferring his soul into my flesh? How could this be so? I remembered his hints of the tremendous discovery he had made, of its revolutionary effects on psychological theory. Was this interchange of personalities a demonstration of his power, a ghastly experiment which was to give him new life, perhaps enable him to live on through the centuries? Was I his chosen victim? Was my own soul to be transferred into his decadent body to die with it? I did not know how to answer these questions, but I resolved to confront Anderson with them. That night, when he came to repeat his hypnosis, I eyed him sternly. "Your experiment is over," I said boldly. "You will never again hypnotize me." His eyebrows lifted with more amusement than surprise. I shuddered as I looked at his emaciated features. If Dr. Silvara's prediction were correct, he had only 2 more days to live. I marveled that he managed to drag himself to classes. "Whether you want me to hypnotize you or not makes very little difference," he said evenly. "You are no longer in a position to command. You are so suggestible to my treatment that it is not in your power to resist it." I winced at this, but faced him with all the courage I could muster. "You flatter yourself," I said. "You have dominated my mind only because I was fool enough to trust you. I know not what knowledge and skill is at your command, but I realize now what you have been attempting to do. You will fail. In a very few days you will be dead." Anderson laughed. "So you have discovered my little secret? Yes, I have worked every night with you, and last night I almost succeeded. Tonight I will. It will not be I who will be dead in a few days, but you. That will be the reward of my genius. I am the first to prove that the soul is a separate, psychic entity that can be completely divorced from the body. My soul will not live in another world, but on forever in this one, in the bodies of men whose will is less strong than mine. Man doth not yield him to the angels, nor unto death utterly, save only through the weakness of his feeble will." I was discountenanced by the conviction with which he spoke these words. I recognized them as Joseph Glanville's, which had been quoted by Poe in Ligeia. I felt helpless to cope with the knowledge which was at Anderson's disposal. Nevertheless, I put up a brave front and replied boldly, "It is not I who am weak, but you. If you do not leave this instant, I will take you by the collar and throw you out." Anderson only laughed and moved carelessly toward me. His face was so withered by disease and his body was so frail that I could not bring myself to touch him. He began slowly to repeat the words he had used for years to induce sleep into my nerves. I struggled not to listen to them, to fight them off. I felt a numbness creep upon me. My God, was I so weak-willed that I was to lose this battle for my life? I could hear nothing but Anderson's monotonous voice. I knew that I was lost. My mind became befuddled, and my vision befogged. Sleep invested my body. Anderson had won. When I regained consciousness, I only slowly recalled the terrible scene. I switched on the light and looked at the clock. It was 4 a.m. I noticed at once that I was in my own room. Thank heaven, Anderson, though he had succeeded in hypnotizing me, had failed to effect the transference. But my joy was of short duration. I began suddenly to cough. I reached for a handkerchief and beheld my arms and hands. They were the bony, yellow arms and hands of Anderson. I did not trouble to look into a mirror. I knew that I dwelt in the dying body of my false friend. I heard a sound and turned about. Anderson stood in the doorway. But it was I who seemed to appear there. It was my body, my face that I saw. Anderson smiled amusedly. Well, you see what has happened. There is nothing you can do now to save yourself. You must die with the miserable body that houses your soul. A fit of uncontrollable rage shook me. You devil! I cried. I will kill you for this. Both of us shall die. I rushed wildly to the bureau and opened a drawer. Anderson suspected that there was a revolver there, and he sprang after me. Oh, no, you don't, he said, pinioning my arms. I struggled with all my pitiable strength. He held me fast. I gave a last, violent lunge. I tore myself from him and faced him. My victory was short-lived. While I regarded him furiously, gasping for breath, my very lungs seemed to collapse. Blood filled my mouth and nostrils. Anderson watched me sardonically. My knees sagged under me, and I fell to the floor. The pain was insufferable. I was choked, unable to breathe. I knew I was dying. Blackness enveloped me. A second later, I found myself standing, reeling on my feet. On the floor below me lay the body of Anderson. It was bathed in blood. I realized at once that he had suffered a frightful hemorrhage. I stooped to his assistance. I felt his pulse. He was quite dead. In a flash, the memory of all that had happened came to me. I rose to my feet and looked at the dead man with utter stupefaction. What had happened? What had saved me, restored my soul to its own body? The only answer I can give is that the spirit is more inextricably rooted to its corporeal form than Anderson had suspected. Though he had indeed effected a complete metempsychosis, death had undone his work. I simply told the coroner that he had been taken very ill and rushed frantically into my apartment, where he had succumbed from his hemorrhage. It is a pity his genius has been lost to the world. The Late Mourner. John Sloan awoke from a sound sleep. He sat up and peered through the gloom of his room at the faded face of his old clock. The hands pointed very nearly to 2. He had not intended to nap so long. 2 o'clock was the hour set for the funeral rites of his dearest friend. His failure to attend the services would be unpardonable. He would have to hurry. He left his bed with an ease and agility that surprised him. He was very old, and at times it seemed that every muscle and joint of his body ached and pained him. He rang for Chester, his man. There was no answer, and he repeated the summons with vigor. The house remained silent. Sloan was annoyed by his desertion, but he had no time to investigate. He dressed himself hurriedly and fairly ran down the stairs. Somewhere in the house a clock struck 2. The funeral services had probably begun. He decided to walk to the mortuary, an outpost of the commercial invasion of his once aristocratic neighborhood. He quitted his deserted old house and entered the street. The autumn sun was warm and comforting. Brown and red leaves brushed playfully against his ankles. He was cheered and exhilarated by the October scene. It was many years since he had been able to enjoy the outdoors. At the same time, he was saddened by the thought of his friend's death. Few of his cronies remained alive. Nearly all the world with which he was familiar had passed on. He had never married. There were not even relatives to dwell in his rambling old house. His reflection was interrupted by the sight of Tom McGann, the policeman who had walked the beat for 15 years. He enjoyed seeing Tom, who was a good-natured and voluble fellow with a cheery greeting for all. "Good afternoon, Tom," said Sloan, trying hard to equal the patrolman's usual smile. Tom did not answer, but walked silently on, as if he had not seen him. Despite his lateness, Sloan paused and stared after the retreating figure. He was astonished and hurt by the snub. He could not account for such behavior. Had someone circulated a scandal about him? Why had Tom passed him by? The sun lost its bright glow, and the air lost its soothing warmth. The leaves at his feet annoyed him, and October seemed a dismal and inimical month. A sensitive soul, he could not lightly pass off a slight from any human being. He trudged on to the mortuary, dejected and lonely. Outside the funeral home, there were parked a great many cars. His friend's death was deeply mourned. Sloan was a bit envious. When he died, he reflected sadly, there would be few to attend his funeral. 2 ushers loitered in the doorway. They did not deign to notice Sloan as he climbed the several steps. He passed meekly between them and entered the building. To the left was the entrance of the room in which the obsequies were underway. He waded through the thick carpets and stepped inside. No one in the crowded room seemed to notice his appearance. He discovered an empty seat in the rear. He made his way to it, not without treading on the toes of 3 persons who were sufficiently well-bred to betray no notice of his clumsiness. He settled himself in his chair and regarded the clergyman, who was concluding the obituary. Its details sounded familiar to his ears, and for the first time that afternoon he tried to visualize the appearance of his departed friend. He discovered that he could not do so. He had quite forgotten the name and face of the man whom he had regarded as his most intimate companion. The discovery stunned him. How could he excuse such a stupid lapse of memory? Was he so far gone in his dotage that the most important things in his life could escape his memory? He became frantic, like a schoolboy who has lost his place in his reader and trembles from fear that he will be the next to be called upon. He tried to recall things that might lead to the recollection of his friend's identity. Where, when, and how had he been apprised of his friend's death? How long had he been ill? He plied himself with many such questions, but could answer none of them. He surveyed the people in the room. They were all known to him. Perhaps he could name his man by the simple process of elimination. One by one he examined them, but his strategy availed him nothing. His bewilderment was increased by the unaccountable presence of his servants, among whom sat Chester. Why, devil take them, had they rushed off without him? He regarded the coffin, which was placed in a front corner of the room. The corpse was not visible. After the services, he would view it and enlighten himself with regard to its identity. By this time, the funeral sermon had been begun, but the minister's words gave no hint as to the name and situation of the departed. Sloan became impatient. The obsequies dragged to a close. The proprietor of the establishment, with professional suavity, invited the late arrivals to favor the deceased with a last look. Sloan and several others rose and left their seats. Again, he tramped on the toes of his neighbors, who took no notice of his second offense. He came abreast of the coffin and looked down upon the countenance of the dead man. Enlightenment did not come. The pallid features were familiar, yet so very strange. Had death wrought such changes in his friend that even now he would be unable to recognize him? Dazed, he continued to stare at the lifeless face. Then recognition came. He clutched the coffin for support. He did not attempt to struggle with his suspicions. He knew. It was his own face that he saw. It was more withered and aged, bloodless and ghastly, yet indisputably his own. It was his body which lay there with its bony hands upon its chest. With understanding came recollection of the scene which had been effaced from his mind. He lay in his bed. His doctor was authoritatively assuring him that his ailment was insignificant and could not possibly prove fatal. Chester, at his side, looked fearful and worried. Then something choked him. He gasped for breath. The faces of the doctor and Chester were lost in a blur. It must have been then that he had died. Now he comprehended all. He knew why Tom McGann had not spoken to him, why the ushers had not noticed his arrival. All were oblivious to his presence, because he was without that ugly body which lay in its coffin. No longer would the desires and disappointments of the flesh pain him. Never again would its diseases rack him and try his soul. He was free of it. It seemed that he was young again, and strong and healthy. His thoughts were clear and lucid. Truly, he was in the prime of life. He was aroused from his reverie by the sobbing of Chester and his old housekeeper. He would have made them understand that their tears were out of place, that he was alive and happy. The mourners filed out slowly. Sloan regarded each appreciatively, but pityingly. The room became empty, except for the attendants. The lid of the coffin was closed. Sloan was relieved when he saw the dead face disappear. He hoped that he would be able to forget it. The coffin was wheeled away. He watched its removal with satisfaction. He lingered a moment in the vacant room, then stole silently out to a new freedom. Make the most of what we yet may spend, before we too into the dust descend, dust into dust, and under dust to lie, sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end. Alike for those who for today prepare, and those who after some tomorrow stare. A muezzin from the tower of darkness cries, "Fools, your reward is neither here nor there." Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The Pale Man. I have not yet met the man in number 212. I do not even know his name. He never patronizes the hotel restaurant, and he does not use the lobby. On the 3 occasions when we passed each other by, we did not speak, although we nodded in a semi-cordial, non-committal way. I should like very much to make his acquaintance. It is lonesome in this dreary place. With the exception of the aged lady down the corridor, the only permanent guests are the man in number 212 and myself. However, I should not complain, for this utter quiet is precisely what the doctor prescribed. I wonder if the man in number 212, too, has come here for a rest. He is so very pale, yet I cannot believe that he is ill, for his paleness is not of a sickly cast, but rather wholesome in its ivory clarity. His carriage is that of a man enjoying the best of health. He is tall and straight. He walks erectly and with a brisk, athletic stride. His pallor is no doubt congenital, else he would quickly tan under this burning summer sun. He must have travelled here by auto, for he certainly was not a passenger on the train that brought me, and he checked in only a short time after my arrival. I had briefly rested in my room and was walking down the stairs when I encountered him ascending with his bag. It is odd that our venerable bellboy did not show him to his room. It is odd, too, that with so many vacant rooms in the hotel, he should have chosen number 212 at the extreme rear. The building is a long, narrow affair, 3 stories high. The rooms are all on the east side, as the west wall is flush with a decrepit business building. The corridor is long and drab, and its stiff, bloated paper exudes a musty, unpleasant odour. The feeble electric bulbs that light it shine dimly as from a tomb. Revolted by this corridor, I insisted vigorously upon being given number 201, which is at the front and blessed with southern exposure. The room clerk, a disagreeable fellow with a Hitler moustache, was very reluctant to let me have it, as it is ordinarily reserved for his more profitable transient trade. I fear my stubborn insistence has made him an enemy. If only I had been as self-assertive 30 years ago. I should now be a full-fledged professor instead of a broken-down assistant. I still smart from the cavalier manner in which the president of the university summarily recommended my vacation. No doubt he acted for my best interests. The people who have dominated my poor life invariably have. Oh, well, the summer's rest will probably do me considerable good. It is pleasant to be away from the university. There is something positively gratifying about the absence of the graduate student face. If only it were not so lonely. I must devise a way of meeting the pale man in number 212. Perhaps the room clerk can arrange matters. I have been here exactly a week, and if there is a friendly soul in this miserable little town, he has escaped my notice. Although the tradespeople accept my money with flattering eagerness, they studiously avoid even the most casual conversation. I am afraid I can never cultivate their society unless I can arrange to have my ancestors recognized as local residents for the last 150 years. Despite the coolness of my reception, I have been frequently venturing abroad. In the back of my mind I have cherished hopes that I might encounter the pale man in number 211. Incidentally, I wonder why he has moved from number 212. There is certainly little advantage in coming only one room nearer to the front. I noticed the change yesterday, when I saw him coming out of his new room. We nodded again, and this time I thought I detected a certain malign satisfaction in his sombre, black eyes. He must know that I am eager to make his acquaintance, yet his manner forbids overtures. If he wants to make me go all the way, he can go to the devil. I am not the sort to run after anybody. Indeed, the surly diffidence of the room clerk has been enough to prevent me from questioning him about his mysterious guest. I wonder where the pale man takes his meals. I have been absenting myself from the hotel restaurant and patronizing the restaurants outside. At each, I have ventured inquiries about the man in number 210. No one at any restaurant remembered his having been there. Perhaps he has entree into the Brahmin homes of this town, and again, he may have found a boarding house. I shall have to learn if there be one. The pale man must be difficult to please, for he has again changed his room. I am baffled by his conduct. If he is so desirous of locating himself more conveniently in the hotel, why does he not move to number 202, which is the nearest available room to the front? Perhaps I can make his inability to locate himself permanently an excuse for starting a conversation. "I see we are closer neighbours now," I might casually say, but that is too banal. I must await a better opportunity. He has done it again. He is now occupying number 209. I am intrigued by his little game. I waste hours trying to fathom its point, What possible motive could he have? I should think he would get on the hotel people's nerves. I wonder what our combination bellhop chambermaid thinks of having to prepare 4 rooms for a single guest. If he were not stone deaf, I would ask him. At present, I feel too exhausted to attempt such an enervating conversation. I am tremendously interested in the pale man's next move. He must either skip a room or remain where he is. For a permanent guest, a very old lady occupies number 208. She has not budged from her room since I have been here, and I imagine that she does not intend to. I wonder what the pale man will do. I await his decision with the nervous excitement of a devotee of the track on the eve of a big race. After all, I have so little diversion. Well, the mysterious guest was not forced to remain where he was, nor did he have to skip a room. The lady in number 208 simplified matters by conveniently dying. No one knows the cause of her death, but it is generally attributed to old age. She was buried this morning. I was among the curious few who attended her funeral. When I returned home from the mortuary, I was in time to see the pale man leaving her room. Already he has moved in. He favored me with a smile whose meaning I have tried in vain to decipher. I cannot but believe that he meant it to have some significance. He acted as if there were between us some secret that I failed to appreciate. But then, perhaps his smile was meaningless after all, and only ambiguous by chance, like that of the Mona Lisa. My man of mystery now resides in number 207, and I am not the least surprised. I would have been astonished if he had not made his scheduled move. I have almost given up trying to understand his eccentric conduct. I do not know a single thing more about him than I knew the day he arrived. I wonder whence he came. There is something indefinably foreign about his manner. I am curious to hear his voice. I like to imagine that he speaks the exotic tongue of some faraway country. If only I could somehow inveigle him into conversation! I wish that I were possessed of the glib assurance of a college boy who can address himself to the most distinguished celebrity without batting an eye. It is no wonder that I am only an assistant professor. I am worried. This morning I awoke to find myself lying prone upon the floor. I was fully clothed. I must have fallen exhausted there after I returned to my room last night. I wonder if my condition is more serious than I had suspected. Until now, I have been inclined to discount the fears of those who have pulled a long face about me. For the first time I recall the prolonged handclasp of the president when he bade me goodbye from the university. Obviously, he never expected to see me alive again. Of course, I am not that unwell. Nevertheless, I must be more careful. Thank heaven I have no dependents to worry about. I have not even a wife, for I was never willing to exchange the loneliness of a bachelor for the loneliness of a husband. I can say in all sincerity that the prospect of death does not frighten me. Speculation about life beyond the grave has always bored me. Whatever it is, or is not, I'll try to get along. I have been so preoccupied about the sudden turn of my own affairs that I have neglected to make note of a most extraordinary incident. The pale man has done an astounding thing. He has skipped 3 rooms and moved all the way to number 203. We are now very close neighbors. We shall meet oftener, and my chances for making his acquaintance are now greater. I have confined myself to my bed during the last few days, and have had my food brought to me. I even called a local doctor, whom I suspect to be a quack. He looked me over with professional indifference and told me not to leave my room. For some reason, he does not want me to climb stairs. For this bit of information, he received a $10 bill which, as I directed him, he fished out of my coat pocket. A pickpocket could not have done it better. He had not been gone long when I was visited by the room clerk. That worthy suggested, with a great show of kindly concern, that I use the facilities of the local hospital. It was so modern and all that. With more firmness than I have been able to muster in a long time, I gave him to understand that I intended to remain where I am. Frowning sullenly, he stiffly retired. The doctor must have paused long enough downstairs to tell him a pretty story. It is obvious that he is afraid I shall die in his best room. The pale man is up to his old tricks. Last night, when I tottered down the hall, the door of number 202 was ajar. Without thinking, I looked inside. The pale man sat in a rocking chair, idly smoking a cigarette. He looked up into my eyes and smiled that peculiar, ambiguous smile that has so deeply puzzled me. I moved on down the corridor, not so much mystified as annoyed. The whole mystery of the man's conduct is beginning to irk me. It is all so inane, so utterly lacking in motive. I feel that I shall never meet the pale man, but at least I am going to learn his identity. Tomorrow I shall ask for the room clerk and deliberately interrogate him. I know now. I know the identity of the pale man, and I know the meaning of his smile. Early this afternoon I summoned the room clerk to my bedside. "Please tell me," I asked abruptly, "who is the man in number 202? The clerk stared wearily and uncomprehendingly. "You must be mistaken. That room is unoccupied." "Oh, but it is," I snapped in irritation. "I myself saw the man there only 2 nights ago. He is a tall, handsome fellow with dark eyes and hair. He is unusually pale. He checked in the day that I arrived." The hotel man regarded me dubiously, as if I were trying to impose upon him. "But I assure you there is no such person in the house. As for his checking in when you did, you were the only guest we registered that day." "What? Why, I've seen him 20 times. First he had number 212 at the end of the corridor. Then he kept moving toward the front. Now he's next door in number 202. The room clerk threw up his hands. "You're crazy," he exclaimed, and I saw that he meant what he said. I shut up at once and dismissed him. After he had gone, I heard him rattling the knob of the pale man's door. There is no doubt that he believes the room to be empty. Thus it is that I can now understand the events of the past few weeks. I now comprehend the significance of the death in number 207. I even feel partly responsible for the old lady's passing. After all, I brought the pale man with me, but it was not I who fixed his path. Why he chose to approach me room after room through the length of this dreary hotel, why his path crossed the threshold of the woman in number 207, those mysteries I cannot explain. I suppose I should have guessed his identity when he skipped the 3 rooms the night I fell unconscious upon the floor. In a single night of triumph, he advanced until he was almost to my door. He will be coming by and by to inhabit this room. His ultimate goal, when he comes, I shall at least be able to return his smile of grim recognition. Meanwhile, I have only to wait beyond my bolted door. If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below. After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time,